Oliver Friesen, the CEO of Guardian Metal Resources. Oliver, thank you for your time. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. So, you're joining us as I think the first interview post the Trump tariff announcement on Friday here from StockBox. So, of course, there's a lot of market turmoil on Friday, and it's following through again today. From Guardian Metal's point of view, I guess you're not immune to it being a London-listed company, but probably it's quite good news for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is sort of good news for us, I think, in the medium to long term. Obviously, what we're seeing now is just a general market sell-off, and I think that typically will bring everything with it, is how these things typically work. But I think, the reality is, if you look at who the real winners and lose, granted, let's just assume these tariffs stay in place, which they may or may not. If you look at kind of who the winners and losers are of these tariff announcements, there's companies, for example, Apple, who import a lot of products from China or from other countries of which the tariffs kind of most directly affect. So, there's I've read articles that an iPhone is going to be double the cost because obviously a lot of those componentry come from China and other countries affected. So that makes sense. You look at Apple and you look at the cost of the phone, there'll probably be a lot less phones sold. But I think really what the tariffs are in place for, and there's lots of speculation and ideas as to what's really going on here, but the general consensus is that tariffs are put in place to support, in this case, American competitiveness. Right? It's trying to force companies to say, hey, don't manufacture over there where it's cheaper. Do it here in the US, and we're going to actually put a tariff on them to level the playing field effectively. So for companies like Guardian Metal, who are actually already focused on reshoring and bringing back defense metal and tungsten metal supply chains back onto US soil, these tariffs are actually good for us because it makes it more difficult for the US to import tungsten from other countries in the world, and instead is pointing back to the US and saying, hey, we need to industrialize and build back American supply chains and American mines. So obviously everything's a bit chaotic and crazy right now, and a lot of companies who do import from other countries are directly affected by this. But when it comes to our day to day as a company, we don't import anything. We're actually looking to reshore and build tungsten metal supply chains back on U.S. soil. So right now, the tariffs don't really affect us at all in terms of our day-to-day operations. And if anything, we're looking to find and looking to support what would be a tariff-free source. Because if you mine it in the U.S., you're not subject to tariffs, and also you're not subject to export restrictions from China. So if we were in the mine building phase, I'd say it'd probably have more of an effect on us because a lot of those components and things would come from other countries. But we're not quite there yet. So right now, as it stands right now, what we're doing, which is pushing forward our U.S.-based projects, will actually benefit from these tariffs and ultimately represent a tariff-free source. So it's obviously chaotic right now. I think the dust will settle at some stage here, as it always does. And I think people can look at Guardian as an opportunity because, hey, this is actually a company that has been pushing forward a domestic source, and these tariffs are there to support competitiveness of U.S. mines and U.S. industries. So yeah, it's chaotic right now, but we, as you can see from the release out today, we're cracking on business as usual, and the need for a domestic tariff-free source is probably higher than it's ever been.
And it doesn't matter so much that Guardian really is as a UK-focused company, even though the project is very much United States.
No, because we have fully owned operating subsidiaries in the U.S. So the UK company, the PLC level is really just the parent, but all of our operations are actually in the U.S. And a few investors have actually queried about that. But below Guardian Metal Resources PLC sits a wholly owned U.S. operating sort of structure. All our employees are actually engaged from the U.S. company, insurance, legals, everything sits actually at the U.S. level with our Nevada-based companies. So for all intents and purposes, we are a U.S. company, U.S. operating company, operating on U.S. projects. Just happens to have a UK PLC company at the very top.
Indeed.
Which means we're very much insulated from anything to do with cross-country relations because we have that whole U.S. structure set up. And for reasons like this, we want to make sure that this is a U.S. company with U.S. employees operating, pushing forward U.S. Development projects.
Good. Well, let's just catch up on the update then. So is it fair to say now that the drilling has come to an end? Phase one resource drilling, you say, is complete. You've got 13 diamond drill holes, but you have also begun geotechnical drilling. But is that drilling that we're always talking about, that's always ongoing, is the main bulk of that concluded now?
Yeah, so the main bulk of the drilling for Desert Shielite is now complete. That will support the updated resource, the updated mine plan, and then that kind of dovetails into the PFS study. The next key step is the geotechnical drilling, as you mentioned, which is now ongoing. And what we're looking to do there is you take your resource, and then the geotechnical engineers set up a sort of a series of drill holes around the resource, and that tells you about the rock from which your open pit ultimately will intersect. So you're trying to figure out how steep your walls can be for your open pit, and these holes will tell us exactly what the rock. So you're actually not looking so much at the geology of these holes; it's more about how fractured are these rock, are these drill holes, vein density, all these different things that you're looking at here to try to characterize what the pit walls are effectively made out of. And that will tell you about your stripping ratio and things like that for an open pit mining operation.
Okay. So this is no longer resource drilling. This is actually looking what will go into the PFS for actual pit planning.
This is the next step, exactly. And what we did highlight in the press release was, the first hole that we drilled. Like I said, you're actually stepping out from the resource. So typically you don't expect to actually hit mineralization because you've said, okay, we've confined the resource. This is where it sits now in 3D space. Let's step away from that and figure out what the kind of the waste rock is going to look like. But as readers might have picked up on the fact that the first geotechnical hole we drilled actually intersected skarn type mineralization, which is a good thing to have. It just shows you the zone is actually bigger. So we can still utilize this for geotechnical purposes. But there's another question of, okay, well, we need to maybe revise our geological model in this area. And also at least two of the holes will be drilled to the southern edge of Desert Shielite. And those who follow the story well will know that on the southern sort of footwall of the Desert Shielite skarn zone is the Porphyry South target. So we're going to have two, I almost classify them as free holes in the Porphyry South because we're drilling them for geotechnical purposes. But similar to the first hole we drilled, we're going to get a lot of good information about Porphyry South there. And these will represent more or less the second and third holes ever in the Porphyry South. So we're going to be watching those ones closely as we drill them.
Good. So that's news to come from the diamond drilling, plus of course the news from these geotechnical holes. And you've also mentioned Garnet as well. There's met tests confirming that recoveries are indeed possible there. So I mean, again, that's just another credit, isn't it? Really, that you're looking to exploit.
Yeah, garnets have been a really important part of the story for probably a year now. And every obviously there's multiple steps before you can figure out kind of how this fits into the PFS and the economics. But every step along the way has been, we received further kind of positive confirmation of what we're doing there. So the gravity, that was the next step. So the first thing we did was actually characterize how much was there. And that came back much higher than we anticipated. Then we looked at what grind sizes you needed to actually liberate the garnet. And now we're at the stage where we're figuring out what is the optimal way to actually recover the garnet. So gravity separation was the first thing we looked at. And actually we had some really positive results come from that. And then we take it a step further, which we always were going to do because garnets they're magnetic, which means the best way to actually remove the garnets and increase your recoveries and the grade of the final product will be through magnetic separation. So that's a step we're at now. The gravity actually was quite positive and better than we anticipated. And now we move towards the magnetic separation to see what the final kind of product would look like and what those recoveries are. So everything's going really well there on the garnet front and looking quite positive. And then those results will be dovetailed once again into the PFS and will affect, some of the downstream operating costs, but also another sellable product if the final results of the magnetic separation are positive.
Good. And before we talk about Tempute, you've also lined up, I think, further targets for drilling gunmetal and those garnet zones. So you're starting that geotechnical work now, looking to start drilling fairly soon?
Yeah, so garnet and gunmetal, those are two of the skarn type zones that we have at surface. They actually, funny enough, gunmetal was one of the areas that they mined historically in the 1940s. So there's high grade zones there. So what we're doing now, the focus is on the geotech because we need to continue to push forward Desert Shielite towards the PFS and towards development. But then looking longer term, we want to now increase the potential mine life, right? So we're looking at other mineralized zones on the property and saying, hey, garnet and gunmetal are only, mile and a half away from where the main kind of infrastructure will be to support the development of desert scheelite. And if we could prove up resources there as well, you could use the central processing and milling facilities and actually extract material from other zones as well to increase mine life. So we're looking at everything holistically. We're not just sort of, one track mine looking at desert scheelite, although that is the main area and source of value right now. But there's so many other really exciting targets on the property, and making sure that we're pushing those forward as well in tandem to support a more robust project with ideally a longer mine life as well.
Good. Now let's talk about Tempute. So you emphasized in the RNS here about the parallel advancement of Pilot Mountain and Tempute to position Guardian Metal as a key US tungsten supplier, leveraging Nevada's advantage for national security and shareholder value. So you're going to actually start developing these. You've given them what you call co-flagship status. So you're going to sort of develop them in tandem, are you?
Yeah, we're just going to de-risk them and push them forward in parallel is the plan. Obviously, okay. We're a bit further behind at Tempute on a few things, but the benefit of Tempute, as we've gone over, is the fact that the infrastructure is in place and is usable, and there's obviously significant value attached to that. But also, the patented mining claims means the permitting requirements are a lot less. So we've actually put together full Gantt charts for both projects, and what we noticed is that even though Tempute right now is a bit further behind, as in we need to do the updated resource, once that's established, because of those other added benefits, it actually can move much more quickly through some of the engineering and obviously the build-out phase as well. So we're looking to make sure we're pushing them forward in tandem, de-risking those two assets. I mean, like I said, the U.S. needs a domestic tariff-free source of tungsten now more than ever. And we are very much in the driver's seat with these two projects. So we're doing all the necessary work at both of them to make sure they're being moved forward and advanced and de-risked in parallel.
And all that work's going on right now, is it? So that's the MET sampling, the tailings study, and you also bought historical data. So you're doing that all as we speak?
All as we speak. Yeah, absolutely. So there's Dr. Carter was on site for, I think it was 10 or 9 days in total. Found some really, really interesting stuff. He sends me photos every day and kind of walks me through what he's seen. There's a lot of value there that I think has been left behind when it comes to how big this system is, and really the fact that the plumbing is a lot sort of richer than I think was understood previously. So there's a lot of value that's being added there. And then, yes, we characterized and we took many, many samples of the historic in-place stockpiles. Those are potential sources of near-term revenue if kind of the samples and the results of that turn to be positive, which so far they do look very positive. Also, the tailings, we've mentioned that, so we're drilling that and sampling that for analysis. So there's lots of different things we're looking at there. Obviously, we purchased a very robust data set, sort of putting that into a geological model now to support that updated resource, as I mentioned. So lots of value levers there, as we discussed previously, and looking to make sure that we're investigating every single one of those as we push it forward.
Excellent. So again, as always, lots of things going on with Guardian Metals. Could you perhaps, Oliver, just set up a bit of a timeline? I don't know how long you want to go for, but maybe the next 3 to 6 months, key things that we can expect to see.
Yeah, so I mean, just on the government side, we're now seeing a lot of the the executive orders and some of the things that were discussed in terms of federal funding. We were seeing a lot of discussion about permitting reform, and now we're seeing a lot of those conversations actually ongoing now. And we're starting to see some of the benefits of those things actually filter through. So I think we're going to see a lot more details from the new administration over the next 3 to 6 months in terms of what that actually means for companies like ours, and potentially a lot sooner than that as well. So it's really positive to see these discussions now happening. And it's very pivotal for us because we're sort of smack dab in the permitting phase for Pilot Mountain. So a lot of these things that are being discussed will potentially directly benefit us as a company who's in the thick of things right now. So I think we're going to see a lot of discussion about macro U.S. government and how, especially with everything going on with the tariffs, it's also important that to sort of in tandem with that, they're also looking at really supporting domestic U.S. projects, because one without the other just doesn't make sense. So expect a lot more kind of information from us, and then also just broadly from the government as to how this is going to benefit us.
Okay.
And then project specific, we're seeing obviously a lot of action and things happening at Pilot Mountain. So we're going to continue to see progress. We have the results pending from Desert Scheelite, the geotechnical results as well. We're, potentially, depending on what we see in those porphyry south holes, the geotechnical holes, we'll certainly release geological information about that. Dr. Carter is now on site actually at Pilot Mountain now, and we've engaged Canborn School of Mines to have a student there go look at porphyry south specifically, and the breccia zones there. So we're looking at getting those areas refined prior to drilling them, which we hope to do sometime this summer. And then drilling at Garnet and gunmetal. There's some high grade zones there that we were starting to model with some of the data that we have. So lots going on at Pilot Mountain, and then Tempute, obviously some of the results from all this work that we're doing, the updated resource with the data we now have in hand. It's going to be, as always with Guardian, full steam ahead. A lot of noise right now, but like I said, at the end of the day, once the dust settles, I think it'll become so abundantly clear how badly the U.S. needs domestic mine sources of all these key input metals, with tungsten being very much near the top of the list. And here we are in the driver's seat. So what a great time for us. And we just keep cracking on, business as usual. Should be lots of news out of us in the next couple of weeks and months here going forward.
Excellent. And I did notice you mentioned about the Canborn School of Mines there. So, I guess that probably feels quite nice, I suppose, because I think, didn't you cut your teeth in the same area? And now you're sort of leading a company with a Canborn School of Mines, an MSc student, sort of doing some of that groundwork that you did in your early days.
I did the same thing. So I did a master's as well in geology and did a very different field. I was in sedimentology, but very similar in terms of working with a company and helping kind of develop a theory and thesis about an important area. Because the reality is, for us to hire someone to go and focus on porphyry south for, the period of time that this student will look at it for, that's hard for us to do as a public company with everything else going on. But to have a student in there now, they're actually boots on the ground right now, collecting samples, and they'll do analysis and look at things that we just wouldn't have the bandwidth to do with everything else going on. So it's great to partner with the Canborn School of Mines, and looking forward to a lot of the results from this work. And Dr. Carter is also involved in that as well, in helping guide that research. So we'll get a lot of additional information about porphyry south and the breccia zones to help aid and supplement what we're doing here at Pilot Mountain. And yes, as you mentioned, it kind of comes full circle as someone who did this very similar thing many, many years ago.
Well, Oliver Friesen, as always, thank you very much for your time. Looking forward to seeing, lots of things. I guess we're going to be keeping quite busy with The Guardian throughout the summer.
Yes, good stuff. Thanks, Martin.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter, and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at StockBoxMedia.com. Thank you for watching.